Merry Christmas, viewers. So, a bit of a special treat for you today. So, what's this about? Essentially, earlier this year, Cory, Winslow and Mike Edelson published an alternative interpretation of silver. And many months ago, Cory contacted me to ask me what I thought about it. And I promised I would give him a reply, and have been kind of avoiding it ever since. Now, since then, Steve Hand has published an article in reply, and what I think of it is pretty well what's in that article, which I helped out with a little bit. But I did promise Cory a reply, and pictures being worth 1,000 words and videos being worth 1,000 pictures, I thought probably a video reply would be the most appropriate thing. And I said I'd get it to him before Christmas, so I've gone and done it. Now, the reason that I've been putting it off is honestly because it would mean rereading the article, which it's what I imagine reading the Necronomicon would be like. You just... the words start to blur on the page as your sanity slowly slips away, and before you know it, you're banging your head against the padded wall of a cell in Arkham Asylum. Okay? It's madness. But I have settled down and I have done my video reply. I'm not going to go through the entire article because that would just take forever. This is bad enough. But essentially, I'm looking at, because the whole thing rests on the idea that you're never allowed to step in with your foot to deliver an attack. Okay, that's the basic thing. Everything must be done in the speed of the hand, and if you have to step in to reach your opponent to deliver your attack, it's a false time, and that's their main gist. And I've looked at the 4 alternatives to stepping in with an attack that they give as possibilities, and we're going to examine those and look at whether or not any of them are actually going to work. So the core of the argument is essentially that you're never allowed to step forward when attacking. Instead there are 4 alternate things that you're supposed to be able to do, and we're going to demonstrate why none of them work. So let's start with this one. Now, it is true that as a slightly taller person, I have an advantage in reach over Miles, who is a slightly shorter person. So Miles sticks his sword out as far as he can. There is a point at which I can hit Miles and he can't reach me. And so it is true that if we're sparring, that if Miles lets me get to this position here, I might be able to strike him in time of the hand, and Miles isn't able to strike me. Okay? So let me tell you that Miles never lets me do that, okay? He knows my reach, he knows his own distance, he doesn't let me do that. That's the sort of mistake that only inexperienced fencers are going to make. And the real question is, how does Miles overcome that slight disadvantage, okay? Well, here is the answer given in the paper. Miles, be taller. It's not working. The other alternative given is to give him a longer weapon, such as this properly long English rapier, which we all know Silver was such a fan of these sorts of weapons, wasn't he? He really liked extra long swords, right? So now Miles has compensated by having an extra long weapon. So the position is now reversed. If Miles sticks his sword out towards me, okay, he can strike me miles away before I can strike him. So the question is now, how do I overcome the advantage of the really long sword? Okay? So first of all, there is no way I can just walk into distance under any guard at all without being in a position where Miles can strike me and I can't strike him. Okay? It's nonsense. What I can do, however, is attack with a normal attack in normal true time from normal wide distance. Because, for example, if Miles is in garden, I would be in open and I would do this. Miles can't simply counter-attack at me because my sword is before me and protects me. And if he parries, because his sword is so stupidly long and longer than perfect length, he can't uncross in time to hit me, okay? So, in reality, I could just do something like that, which is why Silver says, no, don't get a longer sword. Stick to one that is of perfect length for you and no longer, okay? So that is madness. You might say, what if Miles is, say, in open, or he's going to try and counter-attack? Well, in that case, I would take guarded, okay, which closes off that line, and I would get to about here, okay? I've still got plenty of time to defend myself. And if Miles doesn't attack, I can get to a position where I can strike safely, okay? The longer sword doesn't do him any good if he's in open. It doesn't do him any good if he's in guarded. What, I hear you ask, if he points it at me in sort of variable fight, like that? Well, Silver tells us what to do if there's an extended point. Knock it out of the way and then strike. And that is, in fact, the second suggestion. So let's look at a specific example that Silver gives, what happens if Miles is lying in an imbricata. So Silver gives us specific instructions here. He says if somebody is lying with their point extended in imbricata, I should make narrow space upon it, I should beat it out of the way, and then strike it. Now, remember, I'm not allowed to step forward on an attack. I'm not allowed to move my feet. Everything must be done in time of the hand, at speed of the hand. So let's look at how it works according to the paper. It's not working. I can't reach him. Okay? Obviously, I must step forward to strike. I must beat the sword aside and take advantage of that moment in order to step forward in time of hand, body, and foot, in this particular case, in order to strike. Okay? So I have to put in a foot to make the technique work. Okay? And if I'm not allowed to stick in a foot, nothing's going to happen. It's madness. So I'm just going to pause for a moment to point out an internal inconsistency in the theory, and not that consistency is a particular mark of the theory, but this particular one is relevant here. Because on the one hand, we're told continually, you can't step in to make an attack that is somehow a false time. But on the other hand, the instructions for this technique seem to imply that you are supposed to step in. So what is it? Right, you're never allowed to step into attack except when you can. Or what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to beat the sword out of the way, arrest the momentum of the sword, step in and then start it again, and that would make it a true time? Seriously, madness. Now, what happens if I try and aim for the extended target there, the hand? Okay, well in this case, just the forearm. I can do that without stepping because it's an extended target, but it's very easy for Miles to counter that, okay? Once I've done my little beat, trying to cut round to there is it's where his sword is naturally going to go, okay? I can't get to it to the other side either, okay? The head, however, is an easy target to hit as long as I step forward. So no, you can't just hit the hand. So that brings us to our third option. So first thing to say is, yes, okay, this is a possibility. I've done plenty of videos before on how to use these sorts of techniques, okay? But honestly, they're not a system, they're a trick, okay? To use an analogy, they're not the cake, they're not the icing on the cake, they're a cherry on top of the icing on top of the cake, okay? They're a tiny, tiny little exception to the rule that is occasionally useful, and honestly, it will work maybe once against the uninitiated, and that's it, okay? But let's look specifically at how closing in under garden actually works. Okay, so this is what Silver says. So the first thing to notice about this is it's nothing to do with striking in time of the hand. It's about winning the half sword, which is a very different thing. And you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff in British backsword, broadsword manuals that talk about the half sword. Okay, so that's the first thing to say. Second thing to say is you can't just take garden and run into distance and hope that somehow you're going to hit him. That's not what he's talking about. So if Miles and I are both in true garden, okay, good wide distance here, I can't just walk in and hope that I can get to a point where I can strike in time of the hand, because it's a symmetrical position. Miles can do exactly the same thing to me. Oh dear, and I'm going to die, okay? That's not how it works, okay? This is what Silver says about how to make it work. So going out before you come in, what does that mean, okay? So essentially what he's talking about is making a cross step out of distance to a better angle before you close in. So this is how it works. Miles is in garden, I'm in garden, and I make a preparatory action before I come in, which is this. Now Miles, can you stab me? No. Can you hit me on the head? No, okay? I've moved to a position where I'm safe, okay? And having got there, I can then attack. Now, I could strike to the hand in time of the hand, but honestly, there's a lot of better things to do and safer things to do, such as this. Okay? I'm just going to pass forward with my left leg and keep my point on line and run Miles through with an imbricate. Okay? I could, if I want to do it, and this is not how the English use the word half sword, but if I want to do a Germanic style half sword, I can even brace that with my off hand to make sure that he can't deflect it. Okay? So that's how the technique works. That's how I close in under garden. So what Silver is doing here is effectively the same thing that 133 does with its concept of besieging and entering. I don't know if you're a 133 person or not, but the idea there is under the cover of your sword and buckler, you cross through the edge of wide distance, closing off your opponent's line of counterattack so that you can then strike very quickly on the way out. Okay? Silver's doing essentially the same thing here. Newcastle does pretty much the same thing with these sort of weird point up guard. Again, it's not an uncommon tactic in various manuals from various places. There's nothing special about it. But the important thing to note is that it's not magic, it's not indefeatable, it is easily counterable. To get to the position where I can attack Miles, even if I'm going to go for that time of the hand thing, I still need to make a foot movement. I still need to cross the distance from here to get there, which means Miles has a chance to counter. All Miles has to do is counter my angle with an angular step of his own. Oh dear. Okay, now I'm in trouble. Okay, now I can of course simply abort that. Okay, which is why Silver says it's a safe thing to do, because you make your preliminary action. If it's not working, you abort and run away. Okay, but there's nothing magical about me trying to win the half sword on garden And there's nothing to stop Miles countering it the same way he would if I made just a direct attack. Okay? It's exactly the same. Perhaps a better example of winning the place, okay, making an offensive step to a new angle so you can strike, is one that Silver actually mentions twice, which is about attacking somebody from open fight when they are in passata and doing so in time of the hand. Okay, I've shown this before, but let's review how it works. So from this position here, I can move to here on a triangle step. Miles can't reach me because he sort of all the way across the body there. And I can now strike in time of the hand. So essentially, if somebody's in passata, I would go. Now, a couple of things to say about this, okay? According to me, that is a special technique. That is an exception to the general rule that Silver goes out of his way to explain twice, okay? Yet, according to the paper, that's just a normal downright blow. So why does Silver make such a fuss about it and say, hey, you can do this thing in this very specific circumstance if it's a normal downright blow, okay? Second thing to say is, it's not any faster than a normal downright blow, okay? If I do this, that takes about the same amount of time as that. I've still got to move my feet to get here. Miles can see that and he can respond. If I'm making a normal downright blow, he will respond by parrying forehand. Okay? If I make my little step out to the side, and trust me, once people have seen this once, they recognise it. Okay? And all he has to do is slip back a couple of inches. So he sees me do that. Oh dear, he's countered me. It's not special, it's not magic, it's a possible tactic that you can use and it'll work once against the uninitiated, okay? I have done that exactly once to Steve Hand and it has never worked since. Now, sure, in real life, having a couple of tricks that work once up your sleeve is really useful because if they work, the other guy is never going to learn. But it's not the basis for a system, and to say so is madness. And that highlights another piece of nonsense in the whole thing, which is if I'm never allowed to step in to attack, then surely the counter to everything is just step back, okay? If Miles and I are never allowed to step on our attacks, you can, okay? Nothing's ever going to happen, okay? Again, madness. And also, okay, if we're going to stick strictly to Silver, the only time that you can close in is when you are both in garden. So, if Miles is in garden and I take something else, he can't attack me. He's not allowed to step in. And he's not allowed to close in unless I'm in garden too. So he can't do anything. Me, on the other hand, I can attack in time of the hand, body, foot and feet at any time. And Miles can do nothing except parry and hope that his riposte gets in. So again, madness. So lastly, we have the fourth option, which is to feint or false, which is explained like this. For the love of all that is holy. No, okay? No, that breaks every rule of English false play in every English manual ever, up to and including bloody bayonets in 1942. You do not step forward on a feint. Now, I recently did quite a long video covering exactly this, but let's review, okay? So, if I do a fake attack and I step forward at the same time, and Miles doesn't respond by parrying, but by sticking his point out, I'm going to die, okay? The false attack must be made out of distance, and you only step in on the real attack having drawn the response that you want. That's how it works. Okay? Stepping forward with a fake attack is going to get you killed. Don't do it. It's madness. That is, of course, unless I've misunderstood this entirely. And what you actually mean is this. I don't so much do a feint or a false as I start out a distance and I develop an attack coming in behind my sword, and if Miles makes a parry such as that, turn my feint into an attack on another line. Is that what you mean? Okay, is that what you mean? Actually just redirect the sword starting at a distance, because if so, brilliant! How could anybody have thought of something so brilliant? Now, the ability to redirect the sword, as just demonstrated, is precisely why Silver has instructions such as don't parry garden from variable, which is what Miles just did, because of my ability to do that. But it does provide an opportunity to point out once again why you're completely wrong. Okay, so Silver says don't parry garden from variable because your time will be too slow. Now, under our interpretation, it's not that you can't parry in a hanging guard. Of course you can. It's in every sword fighting manual like ever written. Okay? What he means is this. Against a simple attack, you can get there just fine. However, as the attacker, I've got time to change line. My hand is free to make more than one action on the way in. And so you don't have time to make a second parry. This is a great big commitment of the hand, and it's too slow to make a second parry to the other side should it be deceived. That's why Silver says don't do it. Now, under your interpretation, it means that somehow or other, I've got to hit where I'm in distance to hit Miles with just a hand motion. And for some reason, he hasn't yet stabbed me in the face. Okay? Now, sure, if Miles tries to parry garden from here, it's not going to be fast enough. But guess what? If Miles attempts to parry variable, it's not fast enough either. Okay? If I'm here, it's not fast enough, no matter what he does. He can't get up to there or up to there in time because I'm in close distance. Silver's instructions, which is don't parry garden, just parry forehand, make no sense unless you're doing it our way. Anything else is madness. So how does this Silver actually work? Okay, so here are the three most common and most effective ways that you actually get to gain or win the place of your opponent. Okay? Number one is what we just did. Start safely out of distance, throw your hand in front of you so that you are safe, and draw a defence. And then use the freedom that your hand has, because your feet are coming in behind it, to deal with that. So if Miles, for instance, parries garden from there, I can turn it over and strike to the other side. If Miles parries forehand, but, for example, neglects to slip the leg, I can redirect underneath. If Miles attempts to counterattack by sticking his point out, I can redirect my sword into his sword and whack it away. Okay? So, that is a really useful tactic. Now, yes, you can use deliberate feints, okay, in that instance. So if I have already established that Miles likes to parry garden from variable, okay, I attack and he keeps doing that, and I figure that out, then I can have a plan in mind and I can go false, real attack. Okay? But it doesn't have to be. It can be an ad hoc redirection I just do because I've done it a million times before and my brain just reacts to his mistake. Okay? And that's honestly how it works most of the time. So that's option one. Option two is to strike and fly out upon your ward and then strike again. So what do I mean by that? So we get you to do the same parry. I strike. There. Let's look at that in slow motion. Boom. Boom. Oh! I have now gained place. I can strike Miles Miles in time of the hand from here, and he can't parry. Okay? So, another version. Oh! I can strike Miles in time of the hand from here, and he doesn't have time to parry. So in that case, I have gained the place with my recovery. Okay? I can set this up as what we'll call a second intention attack, but most of the time it's just going to happen because after every attack I'm, according to Silver, supposed to strike and fly out upon my ward. Okay? Oh, look at that. Because I struck, started to recover on my ward, which intercepts his riposte, and now I find myself in the place where I can strike Miles in time of the hand and he can't, okay? So, if you make a good solid attack and you fly out upon your ward, that is recover your sword into a guard as you go outwards, you can often find yourself in a position where you can then strike your opponent in time of the hand. So that is the second option.
Wow.
The third option, of course, is to make a good parry. Okay? So, you run over this side. So against a downright blow, I would move to here. Oh, look at this. I have won the place there. I can strike Miles in time of the hand, and because of my little offhand check, he can't recover his sword, and I can strike him and he can't get away. Okay? So, that is the third most common option. It's just a good parry riposte. Okay? Okay? A good parry riposte will be too fast for your opponent to recover. Which leads us to yet more madness. So if I understand it right, according to the alternate theory, the true times are only supposed to apply in the circumstances after you have parried. So, in other words, okay, that's time of the hand. That's time of the hand and body. That's time of the hand, body and foot. And that would be time of the hand, body and feet. What is that? It's madness. It means nothing, okay? The true times don't apply in this circumstance because at this point, the action is over, okay? He's dead. Stepping back or leaning back or whatever after that is meaningless. Alternatively, of course, I might not kill him. He might have flown out upon his ward. Okay? In which case, again, doing that after I've moved my hand is meaningless. He's out of distance. Times don't exist out of distance. So that's not a time. It's nothing. It's madness. And the other thing to note about that is they're all the same. They're all done. Every riposte is in time of the hand. What happens after that doesn't make any difference. Why does Silver go to such effort to distinguish these 4 layers of attack if they're all done at the same speed? Madness. That is, of course, unless I've misunderstood again, and what you actually mean is this. If Miles attacks and doesn't fly out, I strike him in time of the hand. If Miles flies out a little bit, I strike him in time of the hand and body. If he flies out a little faster, I strike him in hand, body and foot. And if he does the same thing again, strike him in time of the hand, body and feet. Okay, is that what you mean? That you riposte with forward motion depending on the distance of your opponent? Because if so, well, yes, obviously, it's exactly the same as any other attack. A riposte is an attack, just like the initial attack is an attack, and the time that you use depends upon the distance, and the hand must always move first, because if you don't, you will get killed. In this case, Miles just might redouble. If I move my feet before my hand, that's going to happen. I'm going to die. So that would be a false time. On the other hand, that is a true time, and Miles can't hit me because I am safe because I'm moving my hand before my feet. So that's how it's supposed to work. Now, the last thing to say is that Silver, of course, is not just single backsword, okay? He's sword and dagger, sword and buckler, sword and target, two-handed weapons such as the staff, bill, halberd, battle axe, and of course, the two-handed sword. And he doesn't give us separate principles for all these different weapons, okay? He's got one set of principles that he expects you to apply consistently to all weapon combinations. So, how the hell do you expect to do this with a longsword? Okay, you're supposed to be longsword people, and I'm quite happy to admit that English longsword is vastly superior to Lichtenau, but I really want to see you apply this theory fighting some of the traditional Lichtenau practitioners. What the hell are you going to do? What, you're going to take a garden with the longsword and walk at them like that? Well, I needed a stiff drink after that terrifying ordeal. But in short, none of these four alternatives are going to substitute for just the normal way of attacking, okay? It's just not... They've all got something to them. Yeah, sure, tall people have an advantage over short people, okay? But short people, it's not insurmountable, and they certainly can't compensate by getting a longer sword. All they have to do is make sure that when they attack, they move their hand first and step in behind it so that they are protected as they get through that zone where the tall person might have a go at them, okay? And sure, you can feint, but you can't step forward while you're doing a false attack, because if they react by sticking their point out, you will die. False attacks are made out of distance, and you step forward with a normal attack as you make your real attack, okay? And there's every chance that a well-trained fencer will be able to make a second parry. English defences are all designed to be as minimal and therefore feint-proof as possible for that very reason. And sure, if somebody has not seen them before, those little tricks Silver gets it, little exceptions to the usual rule, such as jumping out to the right and swinging in time of the hand, or suddenly closing in under guardant, they will work against the uninitiated once. But they still require preparatory actions, okay? You still got to get from point A to point B, and anybody who's seen it before will be able to counter them just fine, okay? They are not the basis of the system. They are just a couple of little tricky exceptions to the general rule, okay? And finally, yes, if they stick their point out, sure, whack it away and have a go. But your attack is still going to be made stepping forward in time of the hand, body, foot, or feet, depending on the distance involved, okay? And if you try that sort of stuff against Bolognese fencers, you will quickly find there's plenty of ways they can counter that too. Bolognese people love that sort of stuff, okay? So again, you know, tiny, minor little tactic that you can try, but it's not the basis of a system either, okay? And you won't get to do that against other Silverites because they'll never stick their point out, okay? So there's something to all of that, but none of it is particularly special. And the other thing to say is that the implication there that you're supposed to beat the sword, stop your sword, step forward, and then start swinging it again really fast is mechanical nonsense. That's not the way swords work. And you know, I could have done an equally long video on the mechanical follies of the whole thing, which are vast and numerous. Hopefully I won't have to do that. But equally monstrous is the mechanical ideas behind the whole thing. So, no. What I would like to see is videos of you doing this. Grab some backswords, go and fight. Some broadsworders, some Silverites, some Bolognese people, some German Messer people, whatever, okay? Show me you doing any of this, okay? We've got an entire channel full of 20 years worth of videos of us doing our thing and making it work against all sorts of other systems in all corners of the world. Do the same. Show me. Because I think, and do it with other weapons. Show it to me with quarterstaff. Show it to me with sword and buckler. Show it to me with long swords. You're supposed to be longsword people. Do it with long swords. Show me. Because I think the whole thing is nuts. Now, all that said, happy Christmas. Merry Christmas to all the other viewers. And stay tuned because we have a special little musical treat just to close off the year.
Have an eerie, dreary solstice, 'cause the stars are right this year. You'll be slain or go insane with old ones drawing near. Have an eerie, dreary solstice, and when you go down the street, through the gloom to certain doom, you cringe at what you'll meet. Why try the elder sign, such a useless tool? Something there waits for you, a way to die so cruel. Have an eerie, dreary solstice, filled with perfidy and fear. It's no theory, have an eerie, dreary solstice.